All right, let's talk about Hair. So Hair is definitely one of the more unique Broadway musicals to come along, especially at that time. Music and lyrics by Jerome Ragney and James Roldo. So see if you can follow this. Listen to this carefully. I'm going to read this word for word off of my PowerPoint. All right. So Hair tells the story of a tribe, a group of politically active, long-haired hippies of the age of Aquarius, in quotes, living a bohemian life in New York City and fighting against the Vietnam War. Clyde and his good friend Berger, their roommate Sheila, and their friends struggle to balance their young lives, loves, and sexual revolution with the rebellion against the war and their conservative parents and society. Getting where this is coming from? Ultimately, Clyde must decide whether to resist the draft and his friends, as his friends have done, or to succumb to the pressures of his parents and conservative America to serve in Vietnam, compromising his pacifist principles and risking his life. So, first of all, very of its time. Okay. Now, the reason I kind of read it with that little bit of a sarcastic tone is not because of any problem with what the story is about, but the fact that by reading that out, it sounds like this thing has a really complicated, involved story. And it doesn't. All right. The musical is much more of a review than it is a standard book musical, with the different songs and different interjections just kind of coming out of nowhere. And they use this thread of these three characters, and Clyde especially, just kind of as touchstones to keep everything kind of in some kind of order. The things that this musical touched on, again, very controversial for their time. So already, talking about the war in Vietnam and the protest against that. It discusses civil rights. It discusses the changing in hairstyles, mind-altering drugs, Shakespeare, a movie theater that you can find on 6th Avenue, sex, nudity. This is one of the first shows to have full-on nudity. Like one of the last numbers, like the whole cast is on stage naked. Okay? So consider all of that, even compared to things like Cabaret and whatnot, which also pushed the boundaries of sexuality on stage. This thing just kind of blew the roof off of it. Why this musical is important, why we're taking some time to talk about it, is because it holds a very important place in history. Hair is the first musical to go from off-Broadway onto Broadway. For those who don't know what it means, the names are very specific. You have Broadway, which is the actual street in New York where the theaters are, and then you have off-Broadway. The streets just a little bit over. They're not on the main strip. And then you can go as far as off Broadway, which is, some guy's loft somewhere where they put on weird experimental shows. The way it had worked is shows opened on Broadway. You designed a show specifically to be on Broadway, and you had the smaller shows over there. Okay? Hair is the first musical to begin its life off Broadway in one of the smaller theaters, but then it got so popular, buzz around it began to grow and grow and grow and grow until they finally had to move it into one of the main theaters. So now that's kind of a more common path to take. A lot of shows start off Broadway, and the off Broadway musical is a business unto itself now. You can have just as many great off-Broadway musicals as you can Broadway musicals. Also, another point in history with this one is that the songs from it became, permanently linked with the hippie movement and the decade itself. Songs like The Age of Aquarius, Hair, Let the Sun Shine In. These became kind of synonymous with the 60s, with the 70s, and with the hippie movement in general. So we all have heard of, crossover success and crossover artists and whatnot. Well, Hair has some of the first really big crossover songs where of that time. That was the way it was back in the day, but it hadn't been that way since Rodgers and Hammerstein, really. So now we go back to that thing where these songs can be taken out of the musical and played on the radio, and people can connect with them even without seeing the show.